Welcome back, everyone out there. Steve and I are back to discuss something that we are learning about and experiencing. And we're constantly learning about ourselves and hope to bring you insights as well that are helpful, useful, maybe can bring you healing and some comfort in distressing times.
Yeah.
And so a topic that keeps coming up for me is mental processes going on in my head. We've talked about OCD, for example. That's one very obvious example. Well, especially when you have it. When you don't have it, you see people doing things like washing hands so much that their hands start to turn red or
Yeah.
even bleed. Those are the things that are obvious from the outside. But what's going on the inside, that is not so easy to tell. I don't know. There are lots of thoughts that can reoccur, ruminations going on, and usually that includes us not being aware of them. Because if we were aware of what's going on, I think it would be a lot easier to realize, well, that's stupid. I don't want that going on. I mean, I'm not saying you're in total control over your thought processes, but it helps.
It's a stage. Yeah, it's stages, isn't it? It's stages.
Right.
Like identifying that there's a struggle of some kind is the first step towards, I guess, trying to find the happiness. Because obviously these things, when you're like, again, if there's OCD, if there's anxieties, if there's depressions, pains in your mental state within your, mind, being, whichever terms you want to use, it's causing you to be distressed or in pain of some kind, and therefore it's blocking potential happiness, potential content and serene feelings. And I think, and that's again a progression of life. You go through life and you suddenly find out that these things, like you realize at a certain point, whether it's in your, I guess as a kid you probably know it's distressing, but you don't have the consciousness ability most likely to define what it is and process. As a teen, you're probably more aware of it, and there's lots of information out there, and you get bombarded with all that information. And then in your early adult life, you start to be like, okay, well, this is what this is. This is what I have. What things? Because again, taking OCD, obsessive compulsive. It's like a compulsion is a compulsion is a great word. Like again, it sounds really weird, but I love that word because it really shows how difficult certain things can be. Like if you have most things we do, an impulse or compulsion, those terms, like our behaviors, we can acknowledge and realize, but that's first step we just talked about,
Mhm.
but to process that, accept it, and to, if needs be, change it to again become happier. Not for other people, because this is an interesting topic. I don't know how you feel about this, but a lot of these a lot of, I guess, mental health stuff potentially has to change because mainstream society can't deal with it.
What
Like,
mental health
obviously, you have to
stuff
have
do you mean?
a lot of it. So, let's say panic attacks, anxieties, and fears. Let's take that one for example, or even like some depressions. Um, let's say you're out and about and you're having a depression moment. Everyone's like, "Oh, cheer up, be happy. Come on, don't. Why are you so
Pull
down?"
yourself together.
Yeah, and that's society like forcing someone to feel wrong and different
Hmm.
about what's going on in them. Like they're not being patient and understanding and loving enough. Like it's always the not the inflicted, that's the wrong term, but like those that struggle have to try and adapt. Autism is a great one as well, actually. If you have autism, constantly you're trying to have to adapt to, or actually most disabilities, like if you're blind, if you're deaf,
Hmm.
like it's you that has to try and do your best to adapt to the inverted commas norms.
And your struggle
And
isn't being helped by ignorant people or
yeah, exactly. And if people are, yeah, like the lack of education and I guess experience, like of people is the moment that they come across a situation where they have to deal with, again, a disability of some kind. They either don't know what to do, or they'll pick what is easiest for them and either walk away from the situation or tell the person to sort it out themselves.
Yeah.
Again, not everyone, that's a very bleak in some ways, but that's a generalization. Again, a lot of people are amazing. Like, again, I see it out and about in society where someone needs help or assistance with something. Yeah, certain people will come to their aid and support and be patient and loving kind. Like, when I see that, I'm just like filled with such happiness and joy. It's nice to see. But I think on a whole, I think at least within British culture, still after so long, there's still a lack of patience and understanding.
But there is a part in every, well, I believe in every mental health healing process, there is a part that you, the afflicted person, are responsible to work through yourself. Yes,
Definitely,
support is
definitely.
important and
Yes.
sometimes necessary, but there is at least a part that is necessarily your own burden to bear and to work through.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without question. Again, you can't rely on everyone for things. Again, it has to be a healthy balance between you as an individual being like, okay, this is, again, I guess it's where the responsibility lies in terms of why you do it. In my opinion, I guess it's like you do it because you want to be happier as a person, that you are in control of your life, not that you want to have to try and appease society, like, and do it for others. I mean, that can be a motivation, that can work. Like, again, that's
Yeah. I mean, usually the motivation is just get rid of this pain.
yeah,
But then it
yeah,
turns out as you go along, wait, there's actually a deeper part to me that I wasn't aware of that was trying to teach me something and I wasn't listening. And so the only other method, the only other way it had to get to me is through pain, so that I would finally stop distracting myself from hearing it and opening up to new signals and new meanings, new sources of meaning in life. And then you don't, if you do make it through the struggle, you never go back to where you were. You advance.
yeah. And that's the internal, I guess, what we're going to be discussing, the internal processing and awareness of things.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned
Because
awareness grows with age. You know, when we're small,
it can. Well, I guess it does to a
it
degree
doesn't
anyway.
have
Yes.
to. Some people are
Yeah.
still as immature in their 70s as they were in their
Yeah.
childhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of Trump and when
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
he gets upset when you make fun of his small hands.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, what's the other one? Is it China, the Winnie the Pooh, where I think that is it China or is it North Korea? No, I think it might be China. They're like literally banned Winnie the Pooh or something because people were like making references to the leader
Oh.
as being like Winnie the Pooh or something, and then it all got banned and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Maybe cartoons.
it's so immature. Like, it's such, again, it's what I guess we call man-child behavior, where there's a stunted maturity because they've been given everything. They've taken everything and they've given everything. They haven't taken responsibility for their own actions. They have either handed lots or taken privilege around them, and therefore entitlement kicks in. Again, entitlement. So they don't have to change. It's everyone else around them that has to change.
Yeah. So we talk about maturity, but what is going on? It's a degree of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Children aren't aware of, say, threats to their safety.
Yeah.
Well, not as many as we are. We're also not aware. it's all as a grade. It's just two different degrees.
Matter of
So,
perspective. Yeah.
the children are driven by just desires for sugar, for example.
We'll
Like
get impulses, compulsions,
yeah,
what we talked about. Curiosity.
yeah. Some things are good and we lose them when we grow
Yeah.
up. That's true as well. Uh, but I would bundle these things into programs that are running in your head and you are blindly acting on them. So you
Yeah.
are unconscious because you're not aware of what program
Yes.
is running right now. And you didn't choose it, you didn't
Yeah.
design it. It's just there and it's running
Yeah.
and you're not
But
aware of it.
I guess it's also cause and effect, isn't it? You're not aware of if you do this thing, the effect will be this. Like, you're not aware of consequences.
Mhm.
in the same way. You don't know really, again, the metaphor of, hand in fire, fire gives light, it gives heat. So therefore putting hand in fire must be good. Like, and then it's like, oh no, that actually burns. Like you've learned that cause and effect.
Um, I
So
want to
you
talk
get to go through the
about
process.
I want to
Yeah.
talk about what it means to live in our head.
Yeah. I guess
Um,
that's the next stage, isn't it? It's the next stage of consciousness where you go from being the programs that you talked about, the impulses, compulsions, whatever, to then, as a teenager, I think it's mostly as a teenager, you become more self-aware, go through
mhm.
puberty, and yeah, this awareness kicks in. You're trying to find identity again. Podcast, who am I? And you, yeah, in your head, like you just said, you start to consciously think about things and wonder about things.
I think, yeah, I think you're interpreting what I'm saying differently
Oh, okay.
than what I'm tending. No, it's correct what you're saying. No, I'm talking about the weaknesses of adults uh, by living in their head. So the
I get, yeah, no, it's the same thing because
okay,
like the I guess well, it's again we're talking about stages, aren't we? Talking about progression. I guess I'm going back a stage before getting to an adult, going through that
okay,
teen consciousness, then you get to an adult, and then you become you can become overthinking and
hmm.
stuck in your head.
That's a good way of
Um,
putting it. And I believe that everyone is overthinking, not just people with OCD.
yes, oh yes,
So what's a good example? Um, if you if you want to do something nice for someone, and then the very next thought is, well, they might not appreciate it, they might not need that, they might not like it. I might even offend them with it. So
yeah.
you don't do anything.
They might think I'm hitting on them, or like that I'm trying to like
Yeah.
seduce them, or
And so
but you just want to do something nice.
in the end, you do nothing, and you might be convinced that that's the best for that person and for yourself, and you were actually wrong. You never found out what the truth is, what the reality is. It was all in your head. And we do this with a lot of things that we're not even aware of. Uh, for example, how the world works. We uh, we know such little about how the world works that we don't want to leave what we are familiar with and try new things because the fear of the unknown, maybe, or all these other stories that have been planted in our head or that we tell ourselves. So self-protection and the need to survive is often a negative thing because it keeps you from expanding and becoming aware of new possibilities.
Yeah, like I have classed myself as an overthinker for most of my life, and it has caused me to again to think myself out of a lot of situations. Now I'm much more impulsive. Again, there is definitely a balance, obviously,
Mhm.
but I have learned to favor that initial thought, that initial feeling, to just go and do it. Because if I start to think about it and process it and go through it too much, again, like you said, like getting a gift for someone or whatever else, then yeah, it just doesn't happen. Like even doing a chore, for example, like doing what chore is such a negative term these days in its association, doing what is necessary and important, like tidying a house. If I start to think about it, it kicks in with all these conditioned beliefs that it's a bad thing that you shouldn't like again because they are like, what is it that has been taught to us to make us think that um maintaining the house tidiness is a chore? Again, the word itself obviously is just a word, but when we say it, it has a negative connotation. I've
Yeah.
got to go do my chores. Automatically, everyone's like, "Oh God, chores. Good luck."
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Why is that a thing? Like,
It starts very early. My
it
my
does, doesn't
nieces
it? Yeah,
my nieces are 3 and 4, and they already never
yeah,
want to clean up.
yeah. And it's because we're taught that. Like, it's
Yeah, the
again,
difference
if you,
between playing and cleaning up is actually only in your head. It's not what you
yeah,
do.
yeah. Like, I love the feeling of of again, go do my washing or go vacuum the house, having done it and been like, yes, awesome. I did what I had fun doing that. I did it, and again, I've had to reprogram that, and learn that, and internalize that as a new way of thinking, and it's still tough at times, because again, it takes energy. It is other energy that can be, well, it's energy that can be used doing more in fun things, perceived fun things. I can be playing computer games, or I can be going out for a run, or again, whatever a person wants to do, instead of doing the other thing. So it's interesting how we can again think ourselves out of things, by
So
perspective.
we're very logical, right? We have all these beliefs. Well, okay, even though we might seem irrational a lot of the time, there is a logic behind the process that goes on in our heads. I'm not sure it's the kind of logic I learned at university, where you can write it down and you can understand exactly. In part it is, and that's what scientists do, what researchers do. They try to understand exactly with mathematic precision what is going on with people's thoughts. At least I did, as part of my work as a researcher with linguistic processes. Anyway, there's a lot of logic and rational processes going on, but they are limiting. You mentioned being spontaneous and just doing something without thinking it over. Where does that come from? Where do you still have thoughts and feelings, you're still making decisions, but you don't go through this whole logical calculus to come up with a decision, right?
Yeah,
What
I mean,
other
so
way of making decisions is there?
I think sometimes I do for bigger things, but for majority of life's choices, nothing we're going to do is going to cause something bad. Again, it's that fear. You talk about fear, you talk about the logic. The logic is, if I make this choice, we start thinking about it because we're trying to calculate the outcomes, trying to calculate what could go wrong. We never really calculate what could go right. That seems to be the common thing with our brains.
Yeah.
We very rarely go, oh, okay, what are all the things that can go right? Like, what are the things that can actually be good about this? We tend to just be like, okay, what could go wrong? And then we don't do it because we don't want things to go wrong, because in perceived wrong can equal some sort of, again, emotional or physical pain, whatever. Whereas, again, I've tried to free myself from that, and again, not have that fear. Just do it. Like, again, if it's raining outside and like chucking it down with rain, and I want to go jump in puddles, if I suddenly have that urge and there's not a immediate consequence of, okay, I have to go somewhere else afterwards and won't be able to get dry or whatever. If there's not that thing there, I'll just go, cool, I'll go do it. I'll put on my Wellington boots. I will go out there and I'll go jump in puddles, and people will think I'm insane, but I don't care. Like, that gives me that feeling and freedom to just go and have some fun. And yeah, there are times in our lives we can't just do that. You can't be in the middle of your workplace and be like, actually, you know what, I want to just stop my work and go out and do that. You can't. There's obviously going to be barriers to these things, but then you can internalize that and go, well, I'll do it later. If you can't do it in the immediate time, you just go, okay, cool, well, and then don't think yourself out of it. Don't get in your head and be like, oh no, people are going to think I'm silly or blah blah. Just go do. It does feel, again feels so freeing and liberating, because I think the majority of people want to be doing these things.
Uh-huh.
Like, I think the majority of society, if you walk down, like if you go on the street and you jump in some puddles, everyone starts smiling and looking at you. And they're not smiling and looking at you because they actually think you're crazy.
Belittling, yeah.
They're actually smiling because they wish that they could go do that. Like, they wish they could just go be that free and with their inner child, I guess, what we define that as. But that's just being human. That's not, again, we separate these things into categories, and it gets seen as immature or whatever. But actually, it's just being human.
It
It's part
reminds
of
me
the
of the movie with the Peter Pan movie with Johnny Depp. I can't think of the name right now. Um, when he first
Yes.
puts the Peter Pan story on stage in the theater, he tells the owner of the theater to keep 10 seats or so empty,
Yes.
and then he brings little children from the orphanage to fill those seats. And
Yep.
of course, the owner is against this because he's only thinking of the losing the money that he would have made with those seats. But
Yes.
but it was actually in his favor because the old people who couldn't appreciate the story on the stage as much as the children could, because it, well, in a sense, it is a story for children, but it's for everyone.
Yeah.
When they saw the magic happening in the children's face, that it helped them as well to find the magic.
Now join hands.
Look at me!
I do like it. Look at me. Let's go out. Second on the right, straight on to the morning.
Cheers.
That's a beautiful example. Yeah, the film's called Finding Neverland.
Right.
It's a very emotional film. But yeah, like that scene is actually a brilliant example of how, yeah, as adults we have this conditioned barrier to, I guess, suspend disbelief or whatever the phrase is, and having children there who don't have those barriers and who will see the fun and silliness and just appreciate it, we then lower our barriers, and yeah, and I wish we didn't have those barriers. It'd be nice.
And later in the movie, I think there were three children, and the oldest was, I don't know, 10 or so. And later in the movie, the oldest boy says to Johnny Depp something about his mother and having to look after his siblings now, because his mother isn't well enough to do it herself full time. And then Johnny Depp was sad because he saw, you just became a grown up. You just stopped being a child.
You don't have these responsibilities that come in, because they do happen. Again, we can't negate our responsibilities of life. Obviously, they need to happen still.
But we can. It might take work.
Do it.
It might take time, but we can find that again in us.
Yeah, we can do
and
both.
It doesn't mean going back to being a child. It doesn't mean wearing diapers and just denying everything, denying responsibilities, like you said. The process is a bit different. Well, something different will result from it that will give us the best of both worlds, the best of childhood and being an adult.
The thing that I love to say a lot is, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So as a, I guess, adult, inverted commas, instead of doing it in a very strict, again, what we can call overthinking way, it's being able to do it with an element of, I guess, abandon and freedom and playfulness that we tend to lose as we get older. And I guess the question is, like, why do we lose that? Again, we talked about overthinking things, but I think we've talked about in other sessions about, again, the now, past, future, and how those perspectives affect us. And I think it's because we're always worried. Not always, that's the wrong term, but we're most often worried about the future. I think the future is one of the things that stops us from being as playful or as, again, happy as we can be, because we get stuck in our head. Again, still on that topic, obviously, being in our heads about the future. It doesn't give us a chance to be on the now and what's happening. Because if you go back to the example you gave with, let's say, getting a gift for someone, you are technically worrying about the future by going, how will they respond? Like, will they will they turn around and say that they didn't want it, or will they turn around and say it's too much, or that, well, whatever. It's because in your head you're going, what's going to happen at that moment in the future? And of course that's important to be looking into the future, but we do become so I guess obsessed with it. And I guess, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with I guess the past, again, projections, both future and past? Yeah, they really cause us to be stuck.
So one of the things going on there is predicting the future, right? When before
Good
we
point,
do
yeah.
something, we plan it. It's like
Yeah.
we imagine it happening in our head,
Yeah.
and part of that is predicting the outcome or the consequence of what you do. And you said before there are many possible outcomes, and we tend to focus on the negative ones. But
Yeah.
even an overwhelm of possible outcomes can paralyze us, because if it's too unpredictable, then that means we don't have control over the situation.
Yeah.
And we love control because that means things are going according to plan
Yeah.
and
And then
our expectations are being
yeah.
fulfilled.
Yep. And again, there's no fear because we know.
Mhm.
Again, we have this idea of knowledge in our head. Like example, my personal example, again, mid to late teens and early adult life, constantly trying to predict outcomes. Like not necessarily consciously, but
Mhm.
it was just who I was. So I'll go through this process of being like, okay, well, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and that's going to equal D. So if I do these things, that's going to be the outcome. And yep, full on like belief, knowledge in that situation, and then it doesn't happen. G happens. Something completely unexpected takes place, and it cripples me. It crippled me for like months. Every time that happened, I would like go through a scenario, and my brain would just not be able to cope. Or I, as a being, as a person, however you want to word it, would just be in trauma because of like, well, why didn't it go to plan? That doesn't make sense. Like, what? Like it should have. Like again, that control, and I think it happens a lot. Um, yeah, no, let's go down that line. Within belief systems. So whether your political belief, your personal beliefs, religious beliefs, you formulate at various points in your life these sets of beliefs, and then something that comes along and changes that. Like something will come along and contradict what
Mhm.
your ABC equals D, and you will have to then realign. And what's funny is we keep then realigning it. We keep going, well, okay, well, if ABC equals G, then that's fine, I accept that. But then you find out that after that, G also equals Q.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh, now I have to rechange it again. And you're constantly rechanging. But what I eventually, naturally, and semi-consciously learned is that it doesn't matter. None of the why do we have to have a equation
Yeah.
to make then have an outcome? It's all just things. It's all just existence. Whatever happens, happens. And having to learn to be okay with that was like so painful, to rip away these beliefs and the need, again, as you talked about, for control.
Yeah, I recognize the exact same process in my life, and it's ongoing. A part of
Oh
me
yeah.
still
Oh yeah.
tries to find just the right formula to understand what's going on, to regain that control.
Yeah.
Um, and I also get paralyzed when my uh, expectation gets upset. Then I revert to doing nothing.
Yeah.
So if this stupid world won't work the way it's supposed to, then I won't engage with it anymore.
Yeah.
If it can't behave correctly,
Yeah.
then I'm not going to interact with it at all. So I'm going to retreat and not do any work, not speak to anyone, not open my heart to anyone,
Yeah.
and then I'll be safe. And then I'll be who I chose to be. I
Yep.
think that's pretty common now that I make it explicit.
It's so common. Like we all do it. Like we all do it in any situation. And again, it's to we talked about it before. It's to do with loss. We've lost something. We're
Mhm.
grieving over a situation that we thought was the right way, and we have to go through a process of getting through that grief and that loss.
And changing your conditioning so that it won't happen again. And that doesn't mean correcting the formula to make a better one in your head,
Yes, because that's what I
but
always was doing.
to get rid of the need for formulas.
Yep. Bingo. Can't say it better myself. Like that is literally it. These
Yeah.
formulas that we have. And again, that's tough because again, we're looking for
Yeah.
logic, we're looking for reason, we're looking for explanation. Because that's an important part of life. Like there are certain things we have to apply that to. Like there are certain things we do have to apply formulas to and figuring things out and problem solving. But to do with like again in our minds, figuring out our existence and our purpose and our plan for our lives, we have to let that all go. Because the moment every plan I've ever had for my life, every single time I will make a plan and it will not go according to plan.
Mhm.
So you know what? Make my plan and just do it. And if it doesn't happen, fine. The plan is the whole. There's no micro plans. It's just there's a general direction that I feel that I want to go in. Again, it's choices. It's choices. But if it doesn't go that way, then that's fine. Whichever way it kind of goes.
Mhm.
Acceptance. Again, we talk about it all the time at the moment. At least I do. It's just key. Like, it's so key to just being like, okay, cool, that's fine. That's the way it goes. Like, I don't need to control. I don't need to.
It sounds like embrace the chaos.
Yeah, yeah. Because there's too many variables. Again, we're going back a little bit as well, what we're talking about, trying to do the formula, is that actually we seem to have this eternal desire to predict and prophesy almost about our futures, but there's just too much randomness. There's just too much chaos. There's too much variables, and we need to free ourselves again. A bit matrixy, but we need to free ourselves from those chains that are rigid. They make us think that it has to be a certain way.
It's so scary to do because what is the purpose of life? Well, it's different for different people. Some believe it's survival, some believe it's making money, some believe it's gaining recognition, and there's all these different things that you can get identified with, and they're stuck, and you will get disappointed, and then you will try these different things that we mentioned, denying it or trying to adapt and just trying to find the right purpose in life. But it's all in flux. It's all so unpredictable. So what is the purpose? What is the purpose in life if there is nothing dependable in this sense?
Yeah.
Another way of asking is, what is stable? What is unchanging? The saying, there's nothing constant except change, or the most constant thing in life is change.
Yes.
Is there anything constant? Because if there isn't, then that might lead you down a scary path as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about it in a positive way, accepting change. But what if people get
the process first? Yeah, usually the process first is despair and fear. Like again, going back to all the anxiety I used to have and all the panic attacks and ending up in the mental health hospital and those extremes. Yeah.
Was that due to something like this?
Yeah, like it all contributes. It's like again, it was a combination of physical health being so exhausted that it was causing chemical imbalance. But also, fear of like, well, what do I do with myself? What is my purpose? Like I had everything taken away from me that I had shaped to be Stephen. Like, what do I do? And there's again Dune quote alert, but there's a quote in, I think it's the second one, that in its Dune books by Frank Herbert, that is a person would rather like not exist than become the antithesis of what they are. And so I literally had to go through a process of becoming the opposite. Like again, I was a sporty, like religious person that had all these perspectives, and then all those perspectives were changed or were not true to my belief. They weren't the way that I thought they were. And that, happiness came from being physically healthy. Like that, for example, and that was a false belief. Like I felt happier when I was stronger or faster or whatever. And then when I can't do those things, well, am I going to still be happy? And the answer was no. At that point, I couldn't be happy. I was like, well, no, this is not who I want to be. This is not who I define myself as. as Stephen. And I had to completely change that and be like, well, what is Stephen? What like, if there is no structure, no construct, what is my purpose? And again, it's, as you say, it's a dark path to go down. It's terrifying. But I was very fortunate to have people around me that helped, and because again, not everyone always does, and benefits from the mental health team in this area that I had to push for, had to fight for. But when I got it, it helped me then over the course of months and years, because it was a long process, to realize that, like, I am just me. I don't need these things to define me. I am a being of love and happiness, and sadness and depression and anxiety, but my core is love, and therefore everything else is just an extension of that. And when I finally figured that out and freed these external things, it became my choice, because no matter what I do, that can't be taken away from me. It's me that is in control of that love. Like, that is the one thing that we can, in my opinion, can control. We choose whether we give it up and become bitter and continue to be fearful and afraid. And again, it takes time. I'm not saying that it's just an instant thing. It can take people decades. It can take a long time. But when I got there, when I got to that point, it was, like, again, the happiness took over, and no one, in my opinion, who will see what life throws at me, and if that changes, because I'm like, there's gonna be setbacks, I'm sure. If I was suddenly tomorrow to lose my legs and be in a like wheelchair type situation, I'd probably go through the process again. Probably I'd have to reevaluate things, because like, I believe that I would quite quickly adapt, but who knows in the actual situation. But I know that I would eventually, and would focus again on love and what I can control.
Listening to you, I can imagine our listeners making a cost-benefit calculation. And you're saying emotional pain, physical pain, everything good in your life is gone.
Yep.
And it can go on for years. And what do I get from that? I understand more about who I am. I am less vulnerable. I can't be taken advantage of as easily. Is that really worth it? Or do I prefer to just suppress the pain in my life and keep going?
It's a tough one. I mean, it's a tough call. Like, I wouldn't wish the pains that I went through on anyone, but I think most of us have to go through it. Like, we do. Like,
in retrospect, you're always thankful for it, but you never look forward to it.
In the time, like, you want everything to end. You just don't want to exist. But having come through it, wouldn't change it for the world. Wouldn't change it for the world. And
you described a type of death.
Yeah.
I've often on this podcast mentioned fear of death is something that prevents us often from doing things that might even be good for us.
It's such a good insight. Like, you are really good with breaking it down to a very core element, and I like that about you and what you do.
But in the past, I often focused on physical death, like actual death of the body, which is valid. But I see more and more how our fear is based on a different type of death, which in our mind appears just as real, just as painful, and therefore it's not to be ignored or downplayed.
Yep.
And so I'll use your story again because that's a good example. What type of death did you go through? Well, you identified with what sports and a certain religion, and all these other good, maybe money. So I'm thinking of other examples now.
Money is, but I worked 40, 50, 60-hour weeks to get money, to have a car, to have a flat, and I lost all those things. Those things were all gone.
And when you lose them, you lose your identity with them, right? You're forced to. And then it's up to you. Do I want to cling to that? Do I still want to do everything possible?
And I did. Now? Oh my goodness, yeah. I did for
so it goes
years.
on for a while.
Yeah.
But this need, this program in your head that drives you to behave this way is desperately trying to cling onto existence and it's being threatened by circumstances such as loss and pain. So now it's up to you. Will you keep identifying with this program, with this need, or will you choose, it might be unconscious, semi-conscious, choose to separate yourself, well, distance yourself from it and let it die? And it will feel like you are dying.
Yep.
But new life is made possible
Yes.
through that, a better kind of life.
Yep, definitely. Like, I feel like, again, I feel no longer afraid of, again, the physical death. Like, part of the process was that actually, if I was to die today, would I be happy? Like, if there isn't a part, if there's a future existence or consciousness of some kind, will I wake up from this life, from death, and go, yeah, you know what? You're proud of yourself. And I realized that actually just by being me and just by being, I didn't need all these things. I didn't even need my niceness. So, for example, like I used to have the car to be able to taxi people around a lot. I used to love doing that, and that used to define me. No, don't need that. Like that is good. That's a benefit, but it's not me. Me, it's part of me and part of my existence. But just by walking down the street, giving someone a smile, making that kind of thing, even just existing, I realized that that in itself is enough. We're often trying to have either a legacy. That's always a fascinating thing to me, is things left behind in the world that people will remember us by, or will like be sad over when we're gone, or these kind of things. And we'll do it in different ways. Again, it's all comes down to fear of not existing. Like, if we just didn't exist, then oh dear, is that a bad thing? And you know what? No. Like, if tomorrow again I passed away, died, and no one remembered who I was, if no one, like, if it all just vanished, whatever. I existed. I had that time on this planet.
I like that. When I get sad about all the things that I'm not able to achieve or experience that I wanted to, it helps me to remember Buddha. You know, I recently read Siddharta by Hermann Hesse about the life of Buddha. It's a short book. It's not a biography, but he died, and before he died, he achieved this recognition of who he is, and he was so fulfilled. It's hard to put into words, but I'm trying to remember the sentiment in the book.
Yeah.
He was so fulfilled, he was so free, he was so happy that it didn't matter that he lived in absolute poverty at least at the end. There was a phase in his life where he experienced a lot of nice things. So he was rich for a while. He was in a relationship with the most beautiful woman in the village. He ate all these nice things, and he had all this recognition, and then he left it and went back to poverty. Kind of like Batman, just thinking. Anyway, I believe he never left India. There are lots of interesting things that I like about this world that he never experienced, and yet he is not, at least, disadvantaged because of that. He achieved something that I want to achieve, and I think life goes on after the body dies. So that's another thought that helps me realize the loss or the missed opportunities in this life don't matter. It's fine.
Again, we are enough. Us as an entity, as a consciousness, as a being, it is the goal. That's the goal. The goal is us. There, and then in a sense that makes there be no goal, but we can choose to then do goals if we want to. And that's another key point, I guess, towards the end of all this, is that like, from everything I've said, it doesn't mean I just sit back and do nothing. Now that I feel like I personally have got to a point in my life where I feel at peace with a load of things, I still have all these goals to, I write books, and I want to have people enjoy those books and share them with the world, and I still want to, maybe one day have a family, all these other things. But does it matter if I don't? No, it doesn't matter at all. Like, so what? Like, why are we so like desperate for these things, or arrogant that we want a legacy? Like, I've always, again, like, it seems to be a very much, again, this is a generalization here, but there is a certain male aspect that we have to have kids to pass on our legacy, and our name, and so many men try and shape their kids to fulfill their own, like, sports people especially, it happens a lot, where if they fail, if they get injured or something, they then try and shape some of their kids to fulfill that role that they never got. And like, the arrogance of that is astounding. Like, but again, it happens, and it's fine. That's part of the journey, part of being human. And I think that we just, as a species, need to kind of learn that, it's okay to just be in the now. Again, we talked about the futures and pasts and getting stuck in those things, but in ourselves, that we are enough. Don't have to achieve, but if we want to achieve, then good.
Before we finish, I want to reiterate what we mean by living in the future and living in the past. You mentioned the future is, being anxious about things not turning out the way we planned, but you feel the need to work on it in your head over and over, because if you ever let it go, then things might go other than you planned. Until you realize that thinking about them won't change anything. And living in the past, we didn't go into that so much. What does that mean? It's when for example, when something went wrong in the past and you're still upset about it.
Regret, guilt, these types of things, resentment, bitterness,
shame. Yeah. I think we could. Shame. I think we should do a whole episode on shame and how it holds you back.
Oh my goodness, I could go on all day about that. Yeah.
I've realized that forgiving someone else for something they did to me, some harm they caused me, doesn't really involve them at all.
Nope.
No. It's me letting go of my entitlement of how other people are supposed to treat me. I'm starting to let go of the concept of deserving something. Because that's how the world works, right? In order to achieve something, you do something, and when you work hard, you deserve a certain outcome.
And you get given it. Again, we're programmed from the start. Like, if we study it hard enough, we'll get a good grade. If we work hard enough, we'll get this. It's constantly programmed in us from an early age that they're, again, A, B, C equals D. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. That's not how actual life works.
So I've been a math tutor several times in my life, right? And it's sad when I realize that all these problems that you're given in class are artificial. They have been worked through, from beginning to finish by someone who designed them. And that's just how our educational, especially the intellectual, the very mathematical subjects work, is that someone has worked through this, and therefore there's an answer. Usually there's exactly one answer, and the purpose of you doing this problem is finding the answer that the teacher intends for you to find. Well, that's nothing how life works. No one has, there are many problems that you need to work through that no one else has worked through before. It's not designed for you to find exactly the one right answer. You're not fulfilling anyone's expectations. You are just discovering.
Yeah. What works for you. Again, like we talked about before, when we discuss all the things we discuss, it's all just our experiences. Everyone's experience is relative to them and how they go through life. And again, the answers that they find, and in the way that they find them.
Yeah. Be creative, be intuitive.
Yeah. Adaptation. Yeah.
Do whatever is possible. Einstein is supposed to have said the level of consciousness that we were at when we discovered a problem, posed a question about something, is not sufficient to find the answer. You need to raise the degree of consciousness to be able to find the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been
good.
good to exchange insights on this. We still
Yes,
have a
it
lot
really
to
has.
learn. We're still stuck
Yeah.
in programs.
Yep.
We're not gurus. We just like sharing the progress that we have seen in our life.
Yeah.
And so let us know in the comments if any
Yeah.
of this has been of value to you.
And hopefully give hope. Like, hope that things can change for the better. But yeah, let us know. Keep in touch.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.